I'm Claire, and 4 years ago, I married Tom, thinking we were on the same page about our future. We moved into my luxury apartment on the top floor of a high-rise building in the heart of the city. The view was breathtaking, and I loved standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows each evening, watching the sun set over the skyline. I worked as the head of the finance department at a production company. My career was on a steep upward trajectory, and I was putting in long hours to secure a good future for us. But my dedication to work was causing friction at home. "Claire, you're never here," Tom complained one evening as I walked through the door at 9 p.m. "What's the point of this fancy apartment if you're never around to enjoy it?" I sighed, setting down my briefcase. "Tom, we've talked about this. My job is important to me, to us. It's how we afford this place. My mother thinks." I cut him off. "I don't care what your mother thinks. I'm not going to be the obedient little housewife she wants me to be." Tom's face darkened. "Maybe you should care. She's family." "So am I," I shot back. "And I thought you understood my goals when we got married. Career first, then children." As I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that a storm was brewing. Tom and I were drifting apart, and his mother's influence wasn't helping. But I was determined to stay the course. I had worked too hard to give up now. The next morning, my boss, Mr. Johnson, called me into his office. "Claire, I have some exciting news," he said, his eyes gleaming. "We're merging with a large company from another city. I want you to head up the new department." My heart raced. This was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. "That's fantastic, Mr. Johnson. Thank you for considering me." He held up a hand. "Before you accept, you need to understand what this means. The workload will be intense. You'll need to give it your all. Are you prepared for that?" I didn't hesitate. "Absolutely, sir. I'm ready for the challenge." As I left his office, my mind was already racing with plans. This was my chance to prove myself, to secure our future. I couldn't wait to tell Tom the good news. Surely, he'd understand now why my career was so important. I stopped by our favorite restaurant and picked up a celebratory dinner. At home, I set the table with our best china, lit some candles, and waited for Tom to arrive. When he walked in, his face was set in a frown. "What's all this?" he asked, eyeing the spread suspiciously. "I have amazing news," I began, my excitement bubbling over. "I'm getting a huge promotion. We're talking big money, Tom. We could buy a house, travel the world." "Let me guess," he interrupted, his voice cold. "You'll have to work even more hours. When are you going to start thinking about us?" "I am thinking about us," I protested. "This is for our future." "Future?" He laughed bitterly. "What future? You're never home. The apartment's a mess. I'm tired of eating takeout every night. This isn't what I signed up for when I married you." Without another word, Tom stormed off to his office and slammed the door. I sat alone at the table, the celebratory meal growing cold. As I looked around our beautiful apartment, I had to admit Tom had a point about the mess. But hiring a housekeeper seemed like a small price to pay for my career advancement. 2 weeks after hiring a housekeeper, I noticed a significant change in our apartment. The place was spotless, and there were delicious home-cooked meals waiting for us every evening. I thought Tom would be pleased, but his irritation only seemed to grow. "So, you found a replacement for yourself, huh?" he sneered one evening as we sat down to dinner. I tried to keep my tone light. "I thought this would make things easier for both of us. The apartment's clean, and we have good food." "That's not the point, Claire," Tom interrupted, slamming his fork down. "Tell me, Claire, are you going to find a replacement for yourself in our bed too?" His words hit me like a slap. "That's not fair," I said quietly. "Fair? You want to talk about fair?" Tom stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "What's not fair is coming home to an empty house every night. What's not fair is having a wife who cares more about her job than her husband. With that, he stormed out of the room, leaving me alone with my thoughts. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and tense silences at home. Tom and I barely spoke, and when we did, it usually ended in an argument. But I was so focused on my job, on proving myself worthy of the promotion, that I barely noticed the growing rift between us. Then, one rare day off, I decided to try and make amends. I sent Tom a message. "Hey, I'm cooking dinner tonight. Romantic evening with a special dessert?" I saw that he read the message, but he didn't respond. Still, I took his silence as agreement and set about preparing a special meal. I decorated the table with candles and wine, put on my best dress, and waited for Tom to come home. The sound of keys in the lock made my heart race with anticipation. But when the door opened, my smile froze on my face. Tom wasn't alone. His mother, Margaret, was with him. "Oh, Claire," Margaret said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "How nice. Were you expecting company?" I forced a smile. "Just thought I'd surprise Tom with a nice dinner." "I didn't realize you'd be joining us, Margaret." "Well, I hope there's enough for 3, she said, making herself comfortable at the table I'd set for 2. Tom avoided my gaze as he sat down. I bit back my frustration and went to get another place setting. So much for my romantic evening. As we ate, Margaret dominated the conversation, peppering her small talk with not-so-subtle jabs. "You know, my friend Linda just became a grandmother," she said, looking pointedly at me. "Such a joy, having little ones around the house." I took a large swig of wine. "That's nice," I managed. "Of course, you have to be home to raise children," Margaret continued. "A woman's duties are to her family first, after all." I gripped my fork tighter, feeling my temper rise. "Actually, Margaret, I believe a woman's duties are whatever she chooses them to be." Margaret's eyes narrowed. "Is that so? And what about your duties to my son? To giving me grandchildren?" I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor. "I think it's time for you to leave, Margaret." "Claire," Tom started, but I cut him off. "No, Tom. I'm done listening to this. This is my home, and I won't be lectured here." Margaret stood as well, drawing herself up to her full height. "Well, I never." "Thomas, are you going to let her speak to me like this?" After they left, I poured myself another glass of wine and sank onto the couch. This wasn't how I'd imagined my evening going. As I sat there in my best dress, surrounded by melting candles and half-eaten food, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the beginning of the end? The next morning, I woke up to find Tom gone. A note on the kitchen counter said he'd gone to stay with his mother for a few days, to clear his head. I crumpled the note and threw it away, a mix of anger and sadness churning in my stomach. A week passed, then 2. Tom returned home, but things were different. We moved around each other like strangers, barely speaking beyond necessary pleasantries. I told myself it was fine, that we just needed time to cool off. Then came the day that changed everything. I arrived home late one evening, exhausted from a long day of meetings. As I unlocked the door, I was hit by an unfamiliar scent, something floral and cloying. Stepping inside, I froze at the sight before me. Margaret was in our living room, wearing a bathrobe and slippers, looking for all the world like she lived there. "What's going on?" I demanded, looking between Margaret and Tom, who was sitting on the couch looking uncomfortable. Margaret smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Claire. How nice of you to join us. We were just discussing dinner plans." "Dinner plans?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Why are you here in your pajamas?" Tom took a deep breath. "Mom's going to be staying with us for a while. I'm tired of being alone all the time, and since you're never here." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You invited your mother to live with us without even discussing it with me?" "Well, if you were ever home, maybe we could have discussed it," Tom shot back. I turned to Margaret, who was watching our exchange with a smug expression. "This is my home. You can't just move in here." Margaret's face hardened. "Your home? This is my son's home too, and if he wants me here, then here I'll be. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Tom stepped between us. If you don't like it, Claire, you can leave. I felt like I'd been slapped. Excuse me? This is my apartment. I bought it before we were even married. And now it's our apartment, Tom said. And I'm telling you, if you can't accept my mother being here, then you can get out. I stared at him, shocked into silence. This man in front of me, this wasn't the Tom I married. This was a stranger, parroting his mother's words. Margaret stood up, moving towards me with a threatening air. You heard him, dear. If you don't like the new arrangement, there's the door. I took a step back, my hand instinctively reaching for my phone. If you touch me, I'm calling the police. Margaret's eyes widened in mock surprise, and she clutched at her chest dramatically. She sank back onto the couch, tears suddenly streaming down her face. Oh, how you've hardened her heart, that awful job. To think she'd threaten her own family. Tom rushed to comfort his mother, shooting me a look of pure venom. Without another word, I turned and walked to the bedroom, locking the door behind me. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. It was my boss, Mr. Johnson. Claire, I need you on a plane today, he said without preamble. The merger is at a critical point, and we need you there in person to oversee the financial aspects. I glanced at the clock, 6:30 a.m. Tom and Margaret were probably still asleep. Of course, Mr. Johnson. I'll be there. After hanging up, I quickly packed a suitcase. As I was zipping it up, Tom appeared in the doorway, his expression cold. Going somewhere? He asked. I straightened up, meeting his gaze. Yes, I have to go on a business trip for the merger. I'll be back soon. We can talk then, okay? As I wheeled my suitcase to the door, I saw Margaret watching from the living room, a smug smile on her face. I paused at the door, turning back to Tom. I'm leaving now. I'll text you when I land. Tom's response was curt. Don't bother coming back. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, but I refused to let them see how much his words hurt. Without another word, I walked out the door, the sound of it closing behind me feeling strangely final. The week-long business trip was a whirlwind of meetings, negotiations, and late nights poring over financial documents. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction from my personal life. Every night, I sent a text to Tom, letting him know I was okay. Every night, my message went unanswered. Finally, after 8 days away, I boarded a plane back home. I took a cab from the airport, my heart racing as we pulled up to my building. As I approached my apartment door, I noticed something odd. My key didn't fit in the lock. Confused, I knocked on the door. After a moment, it swung open, revealing Tom and Margaret, both in casual clothes, as if they'd been lounging around all day. Tom? I said, confusion evident in my voice. Why doesn't my key work? Tom's laugh was cold and humorless. Because I changed the locks. I felt like I was in some kind of twisted nightmare. This is insane. Tom, you can't do this. This is my home. Tom's face was hard, unrecognizable. Not anymore. You have a choice to make, Claire. Right here, right now. Your career, or your home and marriage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This man in front of me, this wasn't the Tom I married. This was a stranger, manipulated by his mother's poisonous influence. You can't be serious, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Tom pulled out a stack of papers from behind his back. Dead serious. Here are the divorce papers. Sign them, and you can go back to your precious job. Tear them up, and you can come back inside, as a proper wife should. I stared at the papers, then back at Tom and Margaret. In that moment, I saw my future laid out before me, a life of resentment, of being controlled and manipulated, of giving up everything I'd worked so hard for. Without a word, I took the papers from Tom's hand. His face lit up for a moment, thinking I was about to tear them up. Instead, I pulled a pen from my bag and signed my name on every dotted line. There, I said, handing the papers back to him. I choose my career. Because clearly, I don't have a husband or a family anymore. The look of shock on their faces was almost comical. Before they could respond, I turned on my heel and walked away, my suitcase rolling behind me. As I stood in the elevator, watching the numbers tick down, I felt a hysterical laugh bubble up in my throat. I had just been kicked out of my own apartment, divorced my husband, and lost my home, all in the span of 5 minutes. I spent that night in a hotel, my mind reeling from the day's events. The next morning, I woke up early and called my friend Jessica, a lawyer I'd known since college. "Claire, what's wrong? You never call this early," Jessica's concerned voice came through the phone. I spent the next hour recounting everything that had happened. When I finished, there was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. "Claire," Jessica said finally, her voice calm but firm. "That apartment? You bought it before you were married, right? In most cases, that means it's considered separate property, not marital property. It doesn't get split in a divorce." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I threw myself into my work with even more determination. The merger was progressing well, and I was determined to see it through to the end. I worked long hours, often sleeping on the couch in my office rather than going back to the hotel. A few days later, I got a call from another friend, Lisa, a realtor I'd known for years. "Claire, honey, are you okay?" Lisa's voice was filled with concern. "I just saw Tom's posts on social media. He's saying some pretty nasty things about you." I felt my stomach drop. "What kind of things?" Lisa hesitated. "He's calling you a soulless careerist. Talking about suing you for alimony and trying to get the apartment in the divorce settlement." I let out a bitter laugh. "Let him try. The apartment is mine, and he knows it." After hanging up with Lisa, I sat at my desk, my mind racing. Tom was trying to destroy my reputation, to paint me as the villain in our story. I couldn't let him get away with it. I picked up my phone and dialed Mr. Johnson's number. It was time to get ahead of this story before it spiraled out of control. Mr. Johnson listened patiently as I explained the situation. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. "Claire," he said finally, his voice kind but firm. "I want you to know that your personal life has no bearing on your position here. You're an excellent employee, and we value your work. Don't let this affect your performance." I felt a wave of relief wash over me. "Thank you, sir. I appreciate your support." That being said, Mr. Johnson continued, "I think it might be wise for you to take some time to sort out your personal affairs. The merger is nearly complete. Why don't you take a week off once we finalize everything?" I nodded, then remembered he couldn't see me. "Yes, sir. Thank you. I'll do that." That evening, as I was preparing to leave the office, I received a notification on my phone. Tom had started a live broadcast on social media. Against my better judgment, I clicked on it. There, in our apartment, my apartment, was Tom, surrounded by a film crew. He was gesturing grandly, talking about his plans for a fresh start and a big renovation. I watched, my anger growing, as he invited a crew from a home renovation TV show into our home, promising them free rein to make changes. That's when an idea struck me. A plan so deliciously perfect, it made me smile for the first time in days. I quickly dialed Lisa's number. "Lisa? It's Claire. I need a favor. How quickly can you sell an apartment?" Lisa's laughter rang through the phone. "For you, Claire? I can work miracles. What's the plan?" I quickly explained what I had in mind. Lisa listened, occasionally letting out excited gasps or chuckles. "Oh, this is going to be good," she said when I finished. "I already have a couple in mind who've been looking for exactly this kind of property. They're discreet and they trust me. I can probably close the deal within 2 weeks, maybe less." After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, a smile playing on my lips. Tom thought he had one, but he had no idea what was coming. The next 2 weeks were a whirlwind of activity. By day, I worked tirelessly to finalize the merger. By night, I signed paperwork, fielded calls from Lisa, and watched Tom's increasingly smug social media posts about his renovation plans. Finally, the day arrived. I dressed carefully in my best suit, wanting to look my absolute best for what was sure to be a memorable day. As I sipped my morning coffee, my phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. "It's done. Paperwork signed, money transferred. New owners on their way. Good luck." I smiled, feeling a sense of satisfaction wash over me. It was time. I made my way to the office, trying to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting to what was about to unfold. Around midday, I received another text, this time from Jessica. "TV crew arrived. Tom looking smug. Mother hovering. Show about to start." I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. This was it. For the next hour, I tried to work, but I couldn't concentrate. My eyes kept darting to my phone, waiting for news. Finally, it came. A flurry of texts from Jessica. "You won't believe this. New owners just walked in. Tom's face. Crew is losing it. This is better than any TV show." I couldn't help it. I burst out laughing, drawing curious looks from my coworkers. I quickly excused myself and headed to the bathroom, where I allowed myself a moment of pure, unadulterated joy. When I returned to my desk, there was an email from Jessica with a link to a video. With shaking hands, I clicked on it. The video started with Tom, standing in the middle of my former apartment, gesturing grandly as he talked about his renovation plans. His mother hovered in the background, a smug smile on her face. Suddenly, there was a commotion off camera. Tom looked confused, then annoyed as he was interrupted mid-sentence. The camera panned to show a well-dressed couple walking in, followed by Lisa. The man was holding a stack of papers. "Excuse me," the man said politely but firmly. "But I believe you're in our apartment." The look of confusion on Tom's face was priceless. "Your apartment? What are you talking about? This is my home." Lisa stepped forward, her professional smile firmly in place. "Actually, Mr. Anderson, this apartment belongs to my clients now. The sale was finalized this morning." The camera caught every moment of Tom's face as it transitioned from confusion to disbelief to anger. "Sale? What sale? Claire couldn't have sold this apartment without my permission." "Actually," Lisa said, her smile never wavering, "she could and she did. The apartment was in her name, purchased before your marriage. She had every right to sell it." The next few minutes were chaos. Tom yelling, his mother dramatically clutching her chest and wailing about being thrown out on the street, the TV crew arguing amongst themselves about whether they could use this footage. The video ended with Tom and his mother being escorted out by security, the TV crew trailing behind them, no doubt sensing that they had an even better show on their hands than they'd anticipated. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Johnson. "My office. Now." As I walked into Mr. Johnson's office, I braced myself for the worst. To my surprise, Mr. Johnson was smiling. "Claire, sit down," he said, gesturing to the chair in front of his desk. "I've seen the video. It's all over social media." I felt my face flush with embarrassment. "I'm so sorry, sir. I never meant for this to become a public spectacle." To my shock, Mr. Johnson chuckled. "Claire, you've just proven why you're the perfect person to head our new department. You're clever, resourceful, and you know how to turn a bad situation to your advantage. That's exactly what we need for this merger." I couldn't help but smile. "Thank you, sir. I really appreciate your support." "Now," he said, his tone becoming more serious, "I think it's time you took that week off we discussed. Get your personal affairs in order, find a new place to live. When you come back, we'll finalize your promotion and get you started in your new role." Over the next week, I threw myself into apartment hunting. I wanted a fresh start, somewhere without memories of Tom or our failed marriage. With the money from selling the old apartment, I had plenty of options. It was during this search that I stumbled upon the perfect opportunity. A small house on the outskirts of the city where our newly merged company was headquartered. It was cozy, with a beautiful garden and a view of the mountains. Best of all, it was far away from Tom and his mother. I made an offer immediately, and within days, it was accepted. The day I moved in, Jessica and Lisa came to help. As we unpacked boxes and arranged furniture, we chatted and laughed, the stress of the past few weeks finally starting to fade. As the sun set on my first day in my new home, I stood in the garden, a glass of wine in hand, and looked out at the mountains. For the first time in months, I felt at peace. The next week, I returned to work, ready to take on my new role. As I walked into the office, heads turned and whispers followed me. I held my head high, refusing to be intimidated. Mr. Johnson met me at my new office, a corner space with a view of the city. "Ready to get started?" he asked with a smile. I nodded, feeling a thrill of excitement. "More than ready, sir." As I settled into my new role, I threw myself into the work. The merger was complex, requiring long hours and intense concentration. But I loved every minute of it. This was what I had worked so hard for, what I had sacrificed so much to achieve. One evening, as I was working late, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was another post from Tom, this time begging me to reconsider, to give our marriage another chance. I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. That chapter of my life was closed. I had a new story to write now, and I was the author.